I'm in this tiny coffin. And you can imagine, for the folks watching, listening to this, if you're claustrophobic, imagine strapping into the tiny cockpit of a jet at 30,000 feet at night at 3 in the morning, and people are trying to kill you. It is the maximum amount of fear and anxiety you can have.
How do you achieve something that is really big, maybe seems impossible, or maybe it just seems out of reach? I'm here today with retired Lieutenant Colonel Waldo Waldman, the wingman, and we're going to have a conversation about exactly that. Now, Waldo is a combat-decorated F-16 fighter pilot, having flown 65 combat missions and thousands of flight hours all over the world. Today, he's a businessman and Hall of Fame motivational speaker featured in media like the CNN and the Wall Street Journal. He's authored a bestseller, Never Fly Solo, and he consults with the largest, most diverse companies in the world. To get there, and you got to get this, he overcame massive claustrophobia and a fear of heights, believe it or not, to become an award-winning fighter pilot. Waldo, an honor and a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Sterling. Looking forward to today.
Yeah, well, first, thank you for your service. And how have you been with COVID-19 and everything going on?
You know, it's kind of like a deployment for me. I remember being in Iraq or Kosovo with my wingman, spending a couple months living in a tent with 10 other guys, not knowing when you're going to be headed home. Sure, we're not getting shot at, but there's always this fear that something's going to happen, something's going to show up. But in all, I've enjoyed the challenge of pivoting my business, spending more time with my son, playing baseball with him, really embraced the change and challenge. I've been fortunate that I'm not, financially strapped. I know some people are. Who knows what it's going to be next year? But for me, it's been enlightening to eat my own dog food, to pivot and propel, as I like to say, and truly embrace this change and see how I can come out of it a better person and a better businessman and maybe even a better father and husband.
Yeah, I love it. I've been getting the same thing. I talk about innovation and people are like, oh, well, how are you innovating it now? And I'm like, okay, well, it's something different when you do it yourselves, but the same principles apply. It just is a little uncomfortable sometimes to get through it,
Yeah. Well, yeah. The discomfort is where the growth is, right?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, flying jets was like a dream of mine, and you actually got to do it. How'd you get into it?
So my dad took my twin brother and I, Dave, to Kennedy Airport when I was like around 9 or 10 years old. He was a mechanic. And I'll never forget jumping onto the tarmac, smelling the jet fuel, hearing the rumble of the jet engines, watching the floating birds. And in a heartbeat, I was hooked. He then sat us in the cockpit of that 747 jumbo jet, and I started to play with the switches and the throttle. I said, Dad, what's this place for? He said, it's a cockpit, Rob. It's where the pilot flies the plane.
Yeah. I
knew in a heartbeat right then and there that I wasn't meant to fix the planes like my dad. I was meant to fly them. So here I am, had a path and went for it.
That's so cool. Did your brother get into it as well, or did he go a different direction?
He did ROTC for a year. He wasn't into flying, but he liked the military. He did it for a year, but we're very different, even though we're identical twins. He just wasn't really that fascinated with flying. So he basically said, I'm not going to do that. And went to join Navy ROTC for a year, but didn't like the discipline as much as I did, and then quit after a year and just went into the business world. So, the military isn't for everybody, as you well know. So.
No, it's not. Do you guys work together these days?
We have in the past. Yeah. Dave has his own merger and acquisition consulting company. He trained me in the business on sales and marketing. Mm-hmm. I worked with him around 20 years ago, and then I weaned myself from that, got into technology sales, and now speaking and coaching other entrepreneurs and businessmen and women.
Nice. So I got to tell you, you would think that most people that get into flying, any kind of flying, but especially the Air Force, wouldn't be afraid of heights. Like, was this something that you had all your life? Like, talk to me about that.
So I was always afraid of heights growing up, but it was never really that impactful to me. Uh, I was at Disney World where I really realized it impacted me when I was around 10 or 11 years old. We were on Space Mountain. I
Oh,
did
that'll
not
do
go
it.
on that. I didn't go on that damn thing. My twin brother made fun of me. I sat and had my snow cone or cotton candy while he was riding that thing and came down and he
Yeah.
just laced into me and made fun of me. He was fearless. But for me, I, uh, I just didn't have the courage to face my fears. And even my son now, he's 9 years old. He's kind of afraid of heights a little bit. But I
Yeah.
think, and you know this because you're a performance expert, Sterling, the folks who have the most fears almost are the ones who confront it the most and who have something inside of them that says, break the barrier, overcome it, and don't let it limit you. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got into flying fighters, where I pushed myself and challenged myself in a lot of areas of my life.
Yeah. So was the first time you really confronted it when you got into the cockpit? I mean, that seems like an awfully big place to confront the fear of heights for the first time. You know, did you challenge yourself leading up to it?
But the thing is, it's all about control.
Yeah.
And so as long as I had a parachute strapped to my back or an ejection seat, I knew if something happened, I would be okay.
Yeah.
So it didn't bother me that much. Looking down off the Empire State Building or being at the top of, the top of a 33 feet high diving board, that'll freak me out much more than it did in the plane because I was in the jet. I had my hands on the throttle and stick. I was in control. And so for those folks who are listening to you or have a fear, understand when you relinquish control or find another mechanism to control that fear, that will allow you to still fly through it and gain more control of your mindset, which is really the ultimate goal here, to maintain control of your mindset and your hands, your skills, your performance, all while having the fear, the latent fear, the fear of heights, or for me, claustrophobia, which we'll get into in a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That will be present, but you have to elevate the fear, or I'm sorry, elevate the courage, elevate the focus so that it drowns out that fear focus. And I could share a little bit more with you on that because it's a very difficult concept to grasp initially, but once you get it, you find that you have more control of your fears and your performance than you may think you have.
Yeah, because it seems like so biological, you know, like something you can't control. Like you get in the hot cockpit or you're sitting on the top of Space Mountain and like anxiety grips you and takes you over. And it's, I don't know, it's really something to think like, oh yeah, that's just all a function of your mind that you have something to say about.
Well, when we let our mind control us, that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? You have to truly gain control of your process. Now, as a fighter pilot, as a peak performance expert, to me, it's always about, once again, shifting my focus on only one thing. You know, we talk about task management, we talk about multitasking. It's really about doing, multiple things really, really fast. But if you truly hone in, it's almost like when you're meditating. When they teach you to meditate, you really don't want to be thinking about anything, but they at least first start off with just think of your breathing, focus on your breathing, just that, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. But then after a while, you have to release yourself from thinking and then stay totally present and in the zone. Now that's kind of hard to do in a fighter jet, but it's really about getting in state, totally present in the moment, focused on the initial task at hand. So part of my challenge when dealing with any type of fear, either in combat, worrying if I was going to get shot down, or having a panic attack, which we'll get to eventually, and how I developed claustrophobia, was focusing on my wingman. Or
something outside of yourself.
Yep, distracting myself from myself. You see, this noggin up here is the killer. It pushes us it distracts us from what's important. But when I was flying in this plane, think about being in this tiny little cockpit, right? In this tiny little thing here, barely able to move.
And you flew by yourself, right? F-16, one pilot.
You're flying by yourself, but you're not flying solo. That's the name of my New York Times bestseller, Never Fly Solo. You're flying solo in the plane, but you have your wingmen, the men and women who are working with you in other cockpits, right? And so as soon as I focused on my wingman, that person in that cockpit, as soon as I checked her six, look for the threat, as soon as I looked down on the radar and started working the mechanisms and getting involved in the process, I was no longer focused on myself, my anxiety, wondering if I'm going to freak out or have a panic attack.
Well, because what you're saying is you're in that moment, and in that moment, nothing's going wrong, right? You're not falling out of the sky. And as you can keep yourself focused on the things, the task at hand, well, then it takes you out of your head.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, because we're creating this fear, like the lizard brain, right? Just thinks of fear, and we're programmed from thousands of years of running away from the enemy or not jumping off of cliffs accidentally. But at that moment in the jet, taking off on an 8-hour combat mission, being claustrophobic, the missiles were the last thing that bothered me. It was like, holy crap, I'm in this plane, strapped it to this cockpit by myself. I'm not moving anywhere for 8 hours. I'm in this tiny coffin. And you can imagine, for the folks watching, listening to this, if you're claustrophobic, imagine strapping into the tiny cockpit of a jet at 30,000 feet at night at 3 a.m, and people are trying to kill you. It is the maximum amount of fear and anxiety you can have. But you got to break it down in compartmentalized chunks.
Yeah.
Get honed in on service, on focus, on your commitments. Get out of your head. Who needs you? Because I think the human spirit, when you're truly in this philanthropic, service-minded mode, where I think a lot of our core is, we naturally want to help others. You will do more than you're capable of when you're truly outside your head, outside your cockpit, focused on who needs you. That's why if you're a parent listening to this, and if you're afraid of heights for that matter, and you're imagining being on top of the 33 feet high diving board that I needed to jump off of when I graduated the academy in order to become a pilot, I'm looking down this damn thing saying, I got to jump off this diving board, but there's no way I was going to do it.
Wait, so why do you have to jump off a diving board to graduate flight school?
So it's part of water survival training. There's all these barriers. So you got to learn how to survive in the water. We do it in the pool. We jump off the dive boards. Then we go down to Miami or some other areas, and we do training in these rafts for a couple of days. Shark-infested waters, by the way.
Lovely.
And you're practicing in that water, facing your fears, going through your training. And so if you don't jump off that diving board, Sterling, you don't graduate the academy. Your chances of being a pilot are zero. So it was the first big barrier that I had to deal with my sophomore year at the academy. And I'm thinking, this wasn't in the damn marketing brochure, right?
Right. I thought I had to deal with altitudes, not jumping off diving boards,
Yep.
So how did you deal with that? I mean, I think oftentimes when you've got a big task like that coming up, you tend to blow it up. You keep thinking about it, obsessing about it, worrying about it. Did that happen to you?
100,000%, both jumping off that diving board and also in combat. The nights before flying, wondering, what ifing, going through all the scenarios, and it was the worst, the absolute worst. I mean, weeks leading up to the combat deployment, many times I would have this. Now, by the way, it never impacted my ability to fly the jet, to stay focused. I was able to overcome that fear and still perform despite it. That is the key, my friends. Performing despite the fear. You may feel paralyzed. You may be full of anxiety and doubt. Any warrior is when they go to battle. But it's the ability, despite that fear, to stay in the moment, to continuously perform and serve and get the job done. Most of the top guns, the warriors in life, if you look at history and even the Roman warriors, they talked about their fears. That's why the camaraderie and the teamwork was so important. When they were out there in battle, it was your brother in arms next to you that you were protecting. That was the higher virtue. and to not leave a person behind. These are the keys that I talk about in Never Fly Solo, why my content is so important these days. Because if you look at what's going on with the pandemic, not just worrying about whether or not you're going to get COVID-19, but worrying if your business is going to increase, if your kids are going to go back to school, if you're going to be able to work your job. Your parents, my parents are 91 and 86. Part of my issue now and fear is, what if they come down with COVID-19? How are we going to deal with that?
Right.
So this whole blitzkrieg of combat that we're all in right now, like this World War III, you have to get into this true service mode to disconnect yourself from the fear, because if not, it will overwhelm you. It will drag you down, paralyze you from taking action. And part of this whole pandemic, part of the blessing, is forcing yourself to get into the hangar of life, to retool this plane, to think about, what you need to do to become more physically fit, more mentally stronger, be it meditation, working out. I'm going through a 2-week cleanse now. I got another 2 weeks to go. I'm drinking this garbage right now, losing some weight. Not just because it'll help me be healthier, but I know that the fighter pilot in the squadron flying the same jet, but with new weapons systems on it.
Yeah.
I know that I need to improve. I need to get better. I need to be stronger and more resilient. And so now is the time to say, okay, let me put the jet in the hangar, retool my brain and my mindset so that I'm a lot more confident in my ability to execute on that mission, serving my kids, my family, my community, helping my customers, finding solutions to their problems, and getting out of my pit of despair where I'm distracted and full of doubt, and airborne in the air, getting shot at perhaps, but flying, executing the mission.
Well, and I think everybody's subject to that fear, to pretend we're not, or to just avoid it, I think kind of closes you off to your, as you say, wingmen, or the people around you that can support you. It's the courage that comes out where you say, yeah, you know what? I am scared of doing that thing, of jumping off the diving board, of being in the cockpit, of, going back to work when I might get COVID-19, whatever it might be.
Right.
Sharing that and then doing it anyway, because that's where the people can come in and help you.
Well, it's not just a matter of doing it anyway. You really got to tap into what I call the why before you fly. Your kids, your dreams, your goals, your objectives. What are the challenges in front of you? Who are you trying to defeat? At the end of the day, it's the wingman or wingmam staring back at us when we put our flight suits on every morning. We got to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what do I need to do? What are the objectives of the day? Who can I call if I'm full of fear and doubt? Am I courageous enough to take off my mask and ask for help? If I don't have a solution, if I'm full of fear, if I am paralyzed, part of being a good leader is, and peak performer is knowing your limitations and saying, you know what, I can't get there from here. I've got a distraction. I'm in the pit of despair. I can't break free. And then picking up the phone and talking to a guy like you, or listening to a podcast, or hitting the gym, distracting yourself once again from yourself, and say, okay, let me work on that inner core, that inner wingman. And maybe the best solution is just helping someone else out and filling your jet with joy and bliss by really making a difference for someone else. And I think more than ever now, many of us are blessed to be in that position to help others out, and it gives more meaning to our mission.
Yeah, there's no question. And I think what you said is exactly right. When you find yourself in that pit of despair, do something to disrupt your mental model. And it doesn't matter what it is. Could be a podcast, could be a run, could be anything else, but something that gets you out of that mental state. So you've got some choice, some option in where you're headed next.
Yeah, because it is also about changing your environment, changing your state. In a jet, I'll tell you, I couldn't change my environment. I was stuck in that thing for 6-8 hours at a time. But now, we're sitting in our office, right? Walk outside, pet your cat, listen to some music, kind of get yourself into a different state, and then creativity will come. This is where innovation happens, which you're an expert on, right, Sterling? When you're in a different state, your mind muscle relaxes, new channels open up, and solutions come when you talk to somebody who's like-minded, who's focused, who's passionate, who believes in you. Maybe an idea will flourish from that conversation, and you're no longer full of doubt, but now inspired to take action. That's why I have a saying, innovation starts with conversation.
I love that. Yeah, and it's true. And I want to get to the claustrophobia in a second, but you're really an expert in kind of bringing this mentality of helping others and bringing peak performance into company cultures. How do you do that? Because I think it sounds very sexy, but when it comes down to the humanity of it, of having people share their fears and, kind of have some courage to overcome things and actually help somebody out and mean it, how does that translate?
And, at the end of the day, a business, IBM or Mass Mutual or the Denver Broncos football team, which is ultimately a business as well, it's not life or death, right?
Right.
You don't have to go into that jet and say, my life's on the line if I don't do this job, but it is the life and death of your future, your career, your dreams, the life and death of your charity that you're supporting, the legacy that you're going to leave for your children and grandchildren, or the world. And so you have to tap into that. That's why I think it's always important to, when you're committing yourself to creating a culture of accountability and teamwork and mutual support, you have to first tap into the most important wingman or wingman there is, once again, which is yourself. Am I working on myself? Do I have integrity? Do I understand why I'm going to work every day? What are my dreams and goals? Who needs me to execute? And when you work on the core values, accountability, work ethic, discipline, preparation, all the things that we did prior to this call to make sure that we could deliver a good piece of content to the investors of their time with you who are listening to this podcast or watching it. Hey, we got to put in the hard work ourselves and build trust in that inner wingman, the fighter pilot who's flying the jet every day. And so if you have that confidence in yourself and know that everybody that's part of your company, your squadron of fighter pilots, has that core.
Yeah.
Now you're dealing with the fundamental ingredients of a peak performing organization. That's why culture and standards of operation, standards of how we perform are so important. And we have high standards and high expectations of those standards. And most peak performing companies do, be it standards on how we communicate, how we show up, how we prepare, how we relate to our customers, et cetera. So that also is really, really important, but it starts with you. And then that's the foundation. It starts building from there. And it's coincident with culture and obviously leadership, which sets the tone and make sure that you're aligned with the vision of the organization.
Yeah. Well, what it brings to mind is trust, because I think you really got to trust the person next to you has the greater good in mind, and that's what they're working towards. They're not trying to throw you under the bus or cut you off for that raise or whatever it is. And to be able to cultivate that, really, I think it comes down to the leaders, is a leader's job, right?
100%. Yeah. That's why a wingman, which is what I talk about, is a trusted partner in life.
Yeah.
And a trusted partner in life is really somebody that you feel comfortable with going to for help or coming to for help, right? Think about the men and women in your life, not just at work, but also in your personal life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's your family, maybe it's not your best friend. When you're able to take off your mask, be vulnerable and ask for help, and that guy or gal is going to be brutally honest with you. They're going to have your back. They're going to tell you what you need to hear and not what you want to hear. That is a wingman. That is a culture that embraces accountability and deals with change and ultimately pivots to grow. So building that trust is so key, but it also is so important to understand that you may not see the big picture while you're flying your jet in your office or as an entrepreneur, as a salesperson for Philips Medical Systems or whatever you're working for. You're in your jet, you've got your standards, your obligations, your targets to take out, and you may not see the picture. Now, if you look at this jet once again, you got yourself in the cockpit here, But guess what? When you're strapped into this tiny little plane, you can't see your most vulnerable position, which is where? Out front or behind you,
Well, it's
Sterling?
got to be behind you.
Behind you, right? You can't see if a threat's coming, if a missile's being shot at you. You don't even know if you're leaking fuel or on fire.
There's no rear view mirror in that?
Yeah, some of them do, but not in the F-16. I'd be staring at it to make sure I was looking too good. But
Yeah.
when you have somebody next to you, and you
Yeah.
could picture 300 feet or 2 miles away, when they look over their shoulder, they can see this blind spot. If they're next to you, they can see what you can't see. So if you have a missile coming at you, Sterling, I can look over the shoulder and say, hey, brake right, brake left, turn right, bail out. I can tell you, i.e. give you feedback on things that you may not see.
Yeah.
Now, in that heat of battle.
And you just trust that implicitly because you have to. Your life's on the line.
And this is where culture and training and true essential collaboration comes from, and where innovation comes from once again.
Absolutely.
Because you don't see the big picture, but they do. And you trust them that they have your best interest in mind. You're not going to say, if they tell you to brake right, you're not going to say, you sure you didn't mean brake left? Or you brake right, I'm your supervisor.
Right. In that split second, the missile hits you and you're done. Right.
So you delay, you're dead. Speed is life, responsiveness, trust. I mean, it's milliseconds. And in business, it's the same thing. You don't listen to your customers. You don't listen to your coworker. You let your ego get in the way. Now you're going to be forced to bail out. So creating a culture where people are approachable and coachable. Approachable and coachable. Am I going to be able to tell Joanne something that she may need to hear and not want to hear? Or is she going to be defensive and tell me I'm wrong, or feel alienated, or let her ego get in the way? Or will Joe, get ticked off, and will our relationship be solved because I cared enough for him to grab his keys before he jumped into the car when he was drinking?
Yeah.
Or told him he needs to prepare more for this meeting, because it's the collaboration, it's the we that's the key. And if you can't back each other up and give each other key advice and be approachable and coachable, you can see how that can impact the culture of an organization that's trying to grow.
Totally. And it almost seems ironic or counterintuitive that by going after your vulnerabilities and sharing that stuff with each other, that's actually where peak performance comes from. It's not from just trying your hardest and not sharing anything with anybody else. It's so cool.
Yeah, because sometimes, as you well know, if you don't know the solution or trying the wrong technique, you can try all you want. You may not be able to succeed.
Right.
But a peak performer understands his or her weaknesses. They're smart enough to know their limits and to realize that I don't know, or I need help, are three extremely important words in creating a culture of trust and innovation and growth.
Yeah.
So getting your ego out of the way is important, but also, Sterling, it's once again goes back to the standards. You show up to a meeting, you show up to a squadron briefing. If I pick up the phone, for that matter, making a sales call, my client is studied. I'm doing the research. I'm doing the hard work. I'm asking the what ifs. I'm coming up with a plan. I've got backups all across the way. We are sweating and working and planning so much, because we know at the end of the day that planning and preparation will be the key to overcoming our fear, and will also solidify the trust, where our teammates are saying, I hope Joe and Michael and Lisa were prepared. Well, if I doubt that, then we're not a solid team. And they have to trust me, and I have to trust them. Once again, this is getting to the next level. This is a Top Gun squad, and this is where we're all aces. This is where we're ultimately trying to get to in any organization that's pivoting and adapting to the missiles and turbulence and headwinds that are coming at us every day.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit, Waldo. You developed claustrophobia, right? You didn't have it from a kid. It's something that happened because of an incident.
Yeah. Now, I was always afraid of being locked in the closet or in a laundry bin, but I never had issues flying in a cockpit. You can put me in there in the middle of the night, flying through weather, thunderstorms. It never bothered me. But 3 years into my flying career, I almost died in a scuba diving accident. First time I'd ever been. 35 feet under the water, my mask inadvertently separated. I
So
suck in a
what do you
bunch of
do in
water.
scuba diving? Is it just like you're on vacation, you
I was
decide to
on
get
vacation. Yeah,
certified
yeah,
or
yeah.
something? Yeah.
I went with some buddies. Actually,
Okay.
Pete Yan and Brian Reamer were actually having our reunion for pilot training. We
Uh-huh.
2 or 3 years after pilot training, we said, let's go to Antigua. We were single at the time. We said, we're going to have a great time. And those guys had been scuba diving in the past. And me, I'd never been before, but hey, I'm a pilot. Just give me the mask, throw me in the water. I'll make it
Right.
happen.
Looks the same.
Yeah, it wasn't. And we jumped into the ocean and I was not prepared. I wasn't paying attention to the briefing, in the pool a few hours prior.
Uh-huh.
So I'm flailing like an idiot. The lactic acid's building up. And, I'm using my arms instead of my legs. My mask malfunctions.
Uh-huh.
Inhale a whole lung full of burning, stinging salt water. Lungs felt like they were going to explode. Choking into the mask. Suddenly got lightheaded, thought I was going to pass out, and then had this panic attack.
Yeah.
I didn't know
In
what it
35
was.
feet underwater, you were deep underwater. That's not like you can just pop up to the surface.
Yes. And so I'm freaking out. And I'm like, I gave the universal sign for I'm a wimp. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm like, I got to go up.
Right. For divers, it's not thumbs up, it's good. It's I need to go up.
Yeah. I'm out of here. Right. It wasn't A-OK.
Yeah.
So, I didn't want to get out of that water, but it was the worst experience of my life. No combat mission, by the way, could come close to that day. And I've been on 65 combat missions. I got out of the water, didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
3 or 4 days later, I'm back in the squadron flying like a training mission in a local area. The weather was terrible. Thunderstorms, lightning, some clouds, I'm trying to avoid them, but suddenly I'm flying through the clouds, couldn't see the sun, couldn't see the ground. I'm socked in. We call it flying through, mushroom soup.
Hmm.
And then I look down at the oxygen gauge and I'm like thinking there's something wrong with the oxygen because I'm breathing fast and heavy. I'm having like a little panic attack. I got lightheaded. I'm like, I got to get the heck out of this plane. There's something wrong with the oxygen.
Do you know what's happening, or is it like it just kind of encompasses you all at once?
I didn't know what was happening at the moment. All I thought was there was something wrong with the oxygen because I got lightheaded. And I looked at the oxygen and I realized nothing wrong with the oxygen, but there was something wrong with me. And I realized having the same panic attack that I had a few days prior, instead of being 35 feet under the water, now I'm 35,000 feet in the air. And I experienced that same panic. I was basically PTSD revealing its ugly head in the cockpit. And so I'm like freaking out, finally landed the plane. And for the next 2 or 3 years, every time I got into that plane, I had to deal with this phobia and uncertainty and doubt that threatened to paralyze my ability to do what I love more than anything else, which was to fly.
Yeah. Well, talk about how did you feel about that? As somebody that had been flying for years, all of a sudden developing this claustrophobia and being worried about it. Did you share that with anybody? Did you get down on yourself? I mean, did you go into that pit of despair?
I got into that pit of despair. I was extremely down on myself. I'm like, come on, Waldo, what's wrong with you? You've been flying jets all these years. Why are you so full of fear now?
Yeah.
I couldn't share it with all my fellow fighter pilots because they would have thought that something was wrong with me. I could have potentially lost my wings.
Mm.
And so what I would do is I would once again get so focused on my preparation. I'd focus on my student. I was an instructor pilot at the time before I flew fighters. I was so maniacally focused on him or her, that young student in my plane, teaching them, just getting out of my head. I became the #1 instructor pilot in the squadron. There's some awards on my wall, instructor pilot of the year.
Wow.
The one that students wanted to fly the most with. They didn't know about my fear, the fact that I was sometimes dealing with some crazy crap going on in my head.
Yeah.
All they knew was I was given to them. And so,
well, and to your point of what you're saying earlier, you performed kind of despite it by focusing on the task.
That was the key, focusing on service, focusing on the responsibility that I had as an instructor and as an officer as well.
Yeah.
We have responsibilities that should not be trumped by fear. I mean, if you're a father of a young kid, or even you, Sterling, if you see a kid in the water screaming, help me, he's 3 years old.
Gotta help.
I don't care if you're a father or mother or not, you're probably jumping in that water because you realize that kid needs help.
Absolutely.
We have responsibilities as human beings, and as parents, we get it because if our son or daughter's in the water screaming for help, I don't care if you're afraid of heights, you're jumping off that 33-foot high diving board, because passion trumps fear, and passion is aligned with love. What you love has to be elevated, and loving humanity, loving the fact that people truly need you, that you're truly making a difference, tapping into that. That's why if you really look at the Bible and some of the spirituality, not to get too spiritual, it is like love truly pushes you out of your comfort zone and really puts you in service mode and overcomes fear.
Yeah. Well, love lets you get out of your comfort zone to begin with, I think. And are you religious at all?
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I'm religious. I'm Jewish. My wife's Christian. We're raising our son Jewish. I love God. I believe in God. I believe in the principles that are in the Bible. I don't care if it's the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, Quran. There's wonderful, beautiful words in those books about courage, about accountability, about service, and about integrity and honor and doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's kind of like, I'm a very values-based person. I believe in those things, and it pushes me. When in doubt on something to do, I look back at those core values that I have: integrity, service, excellence, work ethic.
Yeah.
It pushes me to go above and beyond and do more.
Yeah. And it kind of guides you onto which direction to go, because usually what we're dealing with in business or in life or whatever is not like a split-second emergency. It's not like I'm not even going to think before jumping in the water to save somebody. There's a little bit of space there. And in that space, I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, in that space, it seems to me like you've got a choice there, either to go after it and to kind of follow the values, or almost to pretend it's not happening or to look the other way.
Well, I have another saying: the challenge is in the choice. The choice that you make every day to take the easy way out, the road less traveled. For me, it was deciding to fly the F-16 instead of a C-17 transport plane with a big roomy cockpit, take a nap in the back, or choose to deal with my claustrophobia, face my fear, and be willing to strap it to a single engine, single seat aircraft, knowing I'm flying 8 hours. Mm-hmm. And to confront your fear, to confront the right or wrong, to take the road less traveled, knowing that you can maybe have a breach in your integrity and no one will find out, but knowing deep down that your relationship with God, your relationship with yourself, your own perspective about success and honor.
Yeah.
That really has to be the true metric. White lies, how you deal with people, how you treat folks at Starbucks, not at work, but maybe the server at the local restaurant that you eat at. How do you respond when adversity strikes, when you have the option to kind of just not live your values and take the easy way out? Yeah. I had a situation, Sterling, long story short, somebody paid me $5,000 because of my help for them, but I knew that they were giving it to me out of integrity, that I didn't feel comfortable with this person. They didn't live with integrity. They were full of garbage. And I'm like, I'm not going to be sold from this money. And I ripped up the check in front of my assistant. I told the guy, I'm not cashing your check. I won't be sold. I won't be bought. And so living your values is a very big challenge. And it forces us to stay true to who we are and what's important in our life. And these days, you just got to watch the news and politics and government and business and sports, athletes, actors, actresses. A lot of people are selling out on their values for fame or for whatever it is. And it's, I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's a practice too. It's who you are. It's not something that you do. I do a lot of endurance activities, and people are like, oh, well, how do you do it? How do you get through running 50 miles or riding a bike however long? And it's like, well, there's never a choice not to, right? Whether somebody's looking or not, it's almost like I've done it so many times. It's no longer like, well, do I want to get back on the bike or do I not? It's just like a reflex. And same thing with treating somebody well at Starbucks or something that maybe your coworker is not going to notice, but you do it anyways. right? It starts to build into who you are, where you're not just like, oh, should I do the right thing or not? It's just like, no, that's immediately the thing I need to do.
Yeah, and I that's a great point. You know, our response mechanism to fear or to the choices that we make when we're under the gun or choosing between right and wrong, that muscle must be practiced and maintained. And
Muscle like any other.
yeah, and your habits, the things that you were talking about, you know, the amazing things that you do physically and all the amazing accomplishments that you had, it's part of who you are now. It's part of your DNA. And so the next level for you and for me, for that matter, is, you know, how do I flex that muscle and how do I stretch it? I was working out with my son this morning. He's 9.5 years old. I brought my wife in there with me too, because I think it's important to do it together.
Yeah.
So I wanted my son to feel that pain. I'm like, he's doing wall squats. I'm like, you feel that pain? You feel it? You feel it there? Hold another 10 seconds, another 15 seconds. You feel that pain when you're doing those push-ups, the lactic acid? Your body has to get used to that pain. And then the muscles say, whoa, 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 I'm under this stress. How do I deal with the stress in the future? I need more blood. I need more amino acids. I need to grow. I need to break down and grow. And now, instead of doing 3 to 5 push-ups or doing a wall squat for 15 seconds, now you can do 10 push-ups and do it for 30 seconds. You're growing, you're pushing. And it goes back to resilience, Sterling. This is really, really important for the folks listening to this or watching this. We are in a position in our life right now where resilience, your ability to bounce back from challenge, to fight through fear and doubt, to get airborne, even though we're going to get shot at today, to wake up with a sense of uncertainty, knowing whether or not my kids are coming to being homeschooled or not, or whether or not I'm going to be in business next year.
Yeah.
To have that resilience, to work through it, is not just being forced to be in this uncomfortable situation, which we're all in now, but to force yourself under your own terms, on the treadmill, in business, in a relationship, to confront your fear and live in that moment of strain. You know, when you're running, it's not necessarily because you're in better shape than some people who aren't long distance runners. It's because, you know, you're used to that pain, running that ultra marathon. You're like used to it. You are resilient because you've been there before. Your mind and body are there, and you know how to operate in that zone of pain and pressure. And that's why you are ultimately resilient, or able to do that. So the more we put ourselves into positions where we're in that cockpit facing our fears, that's why I'm an expert on resilience. I know what it's like to be in that cockpit. I know what it's like to deal with this amazing fear. Yeah. Put yourself in those positions, get used to that fear, operate and build that confidence that, oh yeah, I ran that ultra marathon. I pushed through it. And now I'm more used to it. I'm not thinking about it anymore. It's now part of my new norm.
Yeah. Waldo, we should make t-shirts that say like choose fear or something. Cause I think that's everything, you know, building, I talk about like getting comfortable being uncomfortable. That's everything. That's where all growth is.
And it's true. It's true. It's muscular growth. It's confidence. Mm-hmm. It's the example, growing your team when they see you pushing through your fears and taking risks and being out front, being the first guy or gal to lead the way. You're growing your team, not just yourself. And that's the next level as well. The example that we set on the field, in the office, and in our home, you know, and that's why when you're doing things, invite others in, have them suffer with you, let them see you going through it. Right. And so it builds this resilient team, not just a resilient individual, which is a beautiful thing, especially when we're working collaboratively more than ever these days.
Yeah. So did you ever overcome your claustrophobia? Did you end up sharing it with anybody?
So I did. My best friend, Mark Wilczyk, who was a pilot in the Air Force, I started sharing it with him, my parents, my twin brother, and I started taking off my mask and realizing that it was normal. As a matter of fact, years later, when I got out of the military, I was interviewed by Sanjay Gupta on CNN, talking about how I overcame my claustrophobia. And there's a little more to it, but I started coaching people, fighter pilots from Denmark, who saw my CNN clip on the internet, and I coached him through his fears. Another guy, his name is Jack. He's out of DC. He was a helicopter pilot. Heard about my story. I coached him through his fear. Realized that it's okay to quit. By the way, he was realized. He's like, I gotta stay in the jet. I said, no, you don't. You don't have to face your fears anymore. It's okay to quit. You're not in combat. Do something else. Find some other vehicle to take your experience and blessing, help others. He became a simulator instructor.
Oh, wow.
And now coaches other PTSD soldiers in the Air National Guard in DC. He found new purpose in his life. And so pivot and then propel. Don't pivot and quit. Don't pivot and fail. Find a new way to help you realize, because I'll tell you what, if there is not meaning in your mission, if there's not something on the other end of that diving board that needs you, that'll help you elevate your courage to face your fear, if there is no why before you fly, if you're not on a combat mission where others need you, then you may not have something altruistic, some higher level, stoic, noble purpose to force you to face your fear. And that's where people will quit. And it's okay. You see, if you got to put your all in, prepare as much as you can, find out who needs you. But if there isn't some greater calling for you, why go through the suffering? Let your ego take second seat and find that passion and drive to do something else. You don't always have to face every damn fear.
Yeah.
That's what people need to realize.
That's something from a fighter pilot too. You know, you can quit. Well, and it sounds like what you're saying, you almost recommend quitting if there's no purpose behind it, because then you're just purely ego driven.
If there's no purpose, if you put your all in, if you ask for help, if you read the books, attended the seminars, looked at every option, if you just didn't quit at the first notion of fear, the first headwind, the first missile launch, bullshit. Get your ass in there and keep going.
Yeah.
So give it your all. You see, what happens is when people are in a corner, a proverbial corner, a corner of their life, if you back up a dog into the corner, they don't have an out, they're going to attack. Same thing with you. If you don't have an option, if you're forced to stay in that jet, this is where depression happens. This is where people resort to drugs, habits, and things that are, and addictions that are a facade to facing their true fears, instead of saying, holy crap, I am crapping in my pants. I can't do this. I need more tools. I need more help. I need more vision and purpose. Let me put my jet in the hangar and retool this fighter pilot. That's why at 52 years old, I'm learning new things. I'm meditating. I'm working out differently than I was before. I'm spending more time with my son. I'm taking up softball, getting my muscles aching again, doing something different instead of being in a hangar of comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like you've got a macro resilience, you know, where overall you're not going to stop, but any particular thing, that might not be the right direction, at least at this time.
You got to be open.
There's always another direction to go.
There is always another direction. That's why you must pivot once again and then propel, move, step away. It's not just turning and changing. Okay, I'm changing, but now I'm working. I'm evolving. I'm learning new tools. I'm reading new books. I need a new solution, a new tool, a new weapon system that I can now employ to deal with this. That's why these podcasts are so important. Getting coaching is important. Attending a seminar, meditating, new fitness routines, health, doing the activity of growth. It just doesn't come philosophically. You have to be executing on it. Otherwise, you become, what I told my son before when he was building up his muscle, you become an atrophied individual. Mm-hmm. You become a weak muscle that isn't pushed, that is just flaccid, and eventually dysfunctional.
And that I think is true suffering, which is different than pain. Yeah.
Well, that and being in that zone of suffering is self-contrived. You're suffering and you've created your own suffering. But here's the thing, you're only suffering if you know that you could be doing better, if you truly want more in your life. For some folks who are atrophied, and we all know folks like this, Sterling, they're living in their own kind of haze of comfort and lackadaisical mediocrity. They're not suffering. They're happy being there.
Right. Yeah, their dreams are realized, and that's fine. Nobody, well, let me say it like this. Not everybody has to reach for the stars.
Yes.
If you're happy, you're satisfied, that's really what it's about. But what I'm hearing is, if you're feeling like you're suffering or you're in pain, you've got some kind of breakdown, it's because, well, yeah, you're called for more.
And deep down that you're called for more, but you're choosing the road less, or you're choosing the easy way out. Like my dad used to say, don't take the easy way out. The challenge is in that choice. And we beat ourselves up intrinsically, mentally, when we know, I ate that Napoleon last night. I did. I had 2 bites last night, Sterling. I did. I gave in to sin.
Well, it's a good thing you were at the gym this morning then.
Because I'm suffering through that. I have a saying, pain leads to peace. I'm going through that pain because it will eventually lead to peace, because deep down, I did the damn work. I burnt the calories. I paid the price of mental suffering because I gave in, which sometimes is a perfect thing to do. By the way, reward yourself, eat the chocolate, eat the fat, do whatever it is. You don't have to be perfect unless there's a reason why you need to. You're going to run an ultra marathon. You better be in kick butt shape. You can't have, certain types of foods in you, whatever, but we beat ourselves up because we give in to sin, the easy way out, and we allow mediocrity to take over. And by the way, it's a slow intrinsic descent to irrelevance and hitting the ground.
Yeah.
That goes back to why never flying solo is important. Many of us in life, and you know this, Sterling, because you've been around, we don't see the blind spot. We don't realize we're flying like this.
Right.
And it takes somebody, a mentor, a coach, a friend, an informal podcaster like you. Maybe somebody's listening, never heard this before, and they're hearing an insight today because they made the choice to invest in themselves and to listen. And we're their wingmen now, giving them tools, perhaps a little of encouragement to get out of that comfort zone and to get in the air and fly. And that's the blessing of what you do in your business, and hopefully what I do every day, sharing in my own goofy fighter pilot wingman way.
Well,
years,
you absolutely do. And I think that's well said. What's next for you? Anything out on the horizon?
So, a few things. I'm doing more executive coaching. I love talking to guys and gals who are, peak performers, entrepreneurs who want to elevate their business, elevate themselves. Jim Rohn, the philosopher, said we got to work harder on ourselves than we do on our job. I love doing that. And so I'm putting it out there more to be that executive coach, that peak performer, because we have to work on that core. Our business is suffering and isn't as flourishing as it could be because we're not working on ourselves enough. So I love that. And I'm coaching more sales teams as well, because I want them to create this fundamental philosophy in their business that draws down to the lower levels of the organization. And when we do that, we're lifting them up. Rising tides lifts all boats. Mm-hmm. So I love sales. I love performance, anything where there's a metric involved, where there's a goal, an objective. I wouldn't be well with payroll managers, that's not my thing. But, or just hourly workers, right? I want somebody that's driven to succeed. So that's something that I'm doing a lot more of. Also, my son's 9.5, 10 years old. I want to be a better father to him and start teaching him more of these metrics and tools through my example, not just through my words. And so I'm trying to eat my own dog food, have these disgusting shakes, which you see here, and lean up and lift others up as well. I have a saying, love lifts and fear drags. We got to lift each other up with some love.
I like it. Well, I'll keep following because now we're wingmen now.
Yeah.
Where can people find you? Social media, your website, all that stuff.
So if you go to yourwingman.com, that's my website. You can sign up for a mission briefing, get 5 videos on peak performance as well. I'm all over social media. Go, Google Waldo Waldman or Waldo Waldman on LinkedIn or Instagram. You can find me there. If you do friend me, let us know that you heard me on Sterling's podcast. And then if folks also want to get that mission ready download and kind of get a couple videos on peak performance, on courage and accountability and collaboration, if they go to yourwingman.com and put a /mission briefing, yourwingman.com/mission briefing, you can sign up and register for those 5 videos. And there's some takeaways there that could help you and your team break through some barriers and give you some more inspiration to follow your bliss and step out of your comfort zone.
Fantastic. And your book, we could just find on Amazon, Never Fly Solo, right?
Amazon, Never Fly Solo. You got it. Yeah.
Great. Well, Waldo, appreciate you. Appreciate everything you're up to. Thanks for joining me.
You got it, brother. It's been a pleasure, and keep pushing it out.
Will do. Thanks to everybody tuning in. Make sure to check out Waldo's book, his website, and everything else. He's just the coolest guy. I've spent the last couple of days just spending some time on him, and it's really a lot of value there. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the other side.